Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm your host Chris, and you are watching Comic Tropes After Dark. This is the weekly Spinner Rack. That's the show where I am going to talk with the folks in my live chat and read the comments below once this is on demand about the latest comic book news. We're just going to riff on that. We're also going to look at the latest books that have come out, some really fun ones. Battle Beast, Lucky Devils. I haven't opened it yet, but I picked up a copy of Mark Spears' The Monster and the Wolf, made to look like an old trading card for a blind bag. That's kind of fun. A few other really cool things, catching up on things like Hector, Plasm, Blood and Thunder. I got a couple issues. Wonder Woman. Oh, but folks, later when I do all the reviews, we're going to start with news, but when I do the reviews, boy, do I have thoughts on this book, Spectators, which I guess Brian K. Vaughan and Nico Henrichon have been releasing on his Substack, but now it's printed as a graphic novel. And this thing is an incredible meditation on sex and violence. But I'll talk about that later. I've got a lot of thoughts, but this thing really impressed me. And if I've got the energy, been fighting like a cold the last few days. If I've got the energy, I'll sort of draw and just chit chat about whatever. Let me give some shout outs to folks in the chat before we start the news. Steve, thank you for the super chat. And yes, I absolutely knew that John Carpenter has synthwave albums. I know that he tours doing that stuff. I love that John Carpenter is in a place where he can do what he loves, because I love so many of his films. And I love a lot of his scores as well. I really admire that he sort of pioneered certain synthetic sounds in a lot of ways. And I love that he is so do-it-yourself in that regard. So anyway, yes, I knew that. Thank you for the super chat. Let's see, what else? Oh, you gave me another one. Time for ice cold. That would be nice. Sugar-free Mountain Dew Baja Blast. I prepared myself a coffee. Just a boring old coffee, but thank you. Go Seahawks. Sure. Yep. That's what everyone in my town says. Hey, GTK. Let's see. Queens, New York. Oh, man. I love Queens. I haven't been to Queens in a little while since my buddy moved to Brooklyn, but I love Queens. Uruguay. Nice to see you, Shin Matthias. Hello, Daniel. Hello, Pasta Jean. Just trying to get caught up, folks, not trying to ignore anybody. None of this is official art. We'll get to that news about 4 or 5 topics in. Oh, good. Thanks for watching. Really nice to see everybody. That's me, Tropey Troperson. I think I've got West Coast Avengers to blame for stuff like that. Oh my God, there's so many nice things I can't catch up. But lovely to see everybody. Tell you what, I'm sorry, I'm not ignoring anybody. I gotta jump down and just be caught up and get into the show. But tell you what I'll do. For anyone that I missed, consider this for you. A double salute. That's for you. Everybody else has to ignore it legally, or I'll enforce it. I am the law. Ignore that double salute and prepare to be judged. All right, let's get on with the news of the week, because there is some great stuff to talk about. Honestly, a lot of positive news that I can't wait to share with you, and some weird things. Let's do it.
We're sitting on top of the story of the century here.
Put an ad on the front page. Cash money for a picture of Spider-Man. He doesn't want to be famous, and I'll make him infamous.
Hi guys, this is April O'Neil from Channel 6 News, and I am here in beautiful New York City.
All right, let's get into things by popping this up. We'll talk about what's on the thumbnail in a few items. Got to do something to bring in new viewers. I'll be talking about all that stuff, like the new comics, after I get through some news. Just going to do the news first. Thanks for asking. I'm excited to talk about it, Cam. Welcome. We'll talk about this. This is just an awkward miscommunication story. Citizen Watches had a booth at New York Comic Con. I get that. They make branded watches. Okay. Makes more I've been to recently that have insulation for Windows advertised, or just T-Mobile? Not like in partnership with anything, just T-Mobile? I'm like, okay. Citizen watches. All right, here we go. Adam Kubert was scheduled to do a signing at the Citizen Watches booth, and he promoted that on his Instagram. He was going to be there on the Saturday at their booth. He designed some watches for them, and he had a print. It's nice looking. So Kubert started by advertising the signing on his Instagram, and he said what he'd do is he'd sign up to 2 items for free, and if they bought a watch, they could get an exclusive print. It's a nice looking print. Citizen Watches staff on Saturday, I guess, started sort of getting angry at the line, saying like, no, you can't have something signed for free. You have to buy something first. So there was a big miscommunication on that from what Kubert had told his followers and what Citizen Watches were telling people in person, creating a lot of confusion at Comic-Con. But to be fair, Kubert did the right thing. I mean, he'd said he would do it. So he did ultimately sign comics for free. Just some weird communication. I just thought that was a weird story that I wanted to share. I just don't know how they were on such different pages. And I also don't think it would take that long to sign 2 items. Now, if you have like no limit and somebody just plunks a huge stack, I could see why Citizen Watches wouldn't be too into that. They're trying to sell their watches, but still, that's crazy. All right. Moving on, Humanoids. Humanoids is going away. They've been a cool publisher, but they have filed for bankruptcy. I'll explain. So first of all, I'm talking specifically about the American side of Humanoids. Le Humanoid started, I want to say, back in the 70s. But it is 2 branches. There's a U.S. branch and a French branch. But just to be clear, the French branch is in a type of bankruptcy right now. They're trying to stay alive. The American side, they filed for Chapter 7. That's not the kind where you reorganize. It's the kind where you liquidate everything to pay off your creditors as best you can, and you cease to exist as an entity. Yeah, I can understand that concern. I really have nothing to tell you that they have said one way or the other on whether they're publishing these Metal Hurlant moving forward. I already started. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a little bit of a bummer. So let me explain to folks who may not know who this publisher is and what the story is. First of all, the court filings, very dry, not fun to read. Hopefully this super abbreviated version is more interesting to you guys. The company says that they have less than $50,000 in assets and between $10 to $50 million in debts. That means a lot of people aren't getting paid. And while I didn't really see anything in the legal filings to indicate this, I really wouldn't be surprised if distribution, specifically with the problems with Diamond, could be a bit of an issue. Because I'm pretty sure that aside from like their Kickstarter stuff, I'm pretty sure that they were still exclusive with Diamond. I don't know for a fact, but I think that was it. They are still selling stuff on their website. So, I don't know. Do you trust them to fulfill that? I think I do, because that gets them money to pay off their debts and stuff like that. But they are not going to be around forever. Humanoids' last big project was a really successful Kickstarter, super successful, for Metal Hurlant. Basically, in America, we had a version called Heavy Metal, but Metal Hurlant was the French anthology sci-fi magazine, and this was in English, but it sort of separated. There was a Heavy Metal is owned by somebody else, like that intellectual property got purchased, and Metal Hurlant could still be published by Humanoids. And they had huge names. I mean, look, a cover by Peach Momoko. They were reprinting classic stuff by Mobius. And but they had new guys like Matt Fraction. James Stokoe did a story. Very cool. Very cool. I didn't get it, and I sort of regret it. If I ever see it at a store, I'd probably get it, because I would like to read it. Humanoids began as a French publishing company. It was founded by Mobius and Philippe Droulet. and they spun off to have an LA side of the business, really separate, back in 1999. Yeah, exactly, EJ. A little bit of Diamond. I don't have a specific news item for them, but I have to imagine that they impacted this on some level. I wouldn't really be the expert to calculate how much, of an impact, but it was not nothing. It's got to be something. Anyway, it just bums me out because they really do have a long storied history. I mean, all the stuff by Jodorowsky, Metabarons, The Inkle, if you've ever heard of any of that, that stuff's great. So much stuff by Mobius, Airtight Garage, and Azarak. Now I'm thinking of it. I'm wondering, there was that art print set by Mobius and Jeff Darrow where they worked on it together. And I'm trying to remember if that was published by Humanoids. I really can't remember off the top of my head. It might have been a different, sort of art company that published it. It wasn't a comic. It was just art prints that they worked on together. It was really, really cool. I don't know. Anyway. I did not love the recolor of the Inkle with modern colors. It just didn't work. I think the longer I've read comics, the more I appreciate the colorists that just understand simple color theory and don't try to use every technique in the book. They color, I won't call it flat, but more simple so that the line art doesn't get muddied. You go back to the early and mid 90s when digital coloring was just emerging, and a lot of those techniques looked super flashy and kind of cool on the surface. But as soon as you really looked at it, it could really muddy up the artwork. It just didn't look that good. I think that we've moved on from that in a big way, in a good way. I've seen The Fifth Element. I don't love it. It absolutely took a ton from The Inkle, as well as other Jodorowsky things. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the writer, director guy, what's his name? I'm pretty sure he's admitted to that it was an homage. Yeah. Right. Luc Besson, yeah. I've never really been a massive fan of any of the Luc Besson movies. I kind of like The Professional, but that was the first one I saw. And it does have some icky vibes to it. It just has some good performances, too. That's the one I was thinking of. Thank you so much, Infamous Mike Manhattan, because it's been so many years since I made my episode about the bande dessinée Valerian that I'd forgotten that. But yes, that's another one. Let's see. 90s under Epic Akira looked fantastic, though. Totally agree. One of my prized possessions in the very small amount of original art that I have is by Katsuhiro Otomo himself. It's like a printed line art page that he did. It's not his actual line art, but he did the color on it just to show what he wanted it to look like. And that's the best I can hope for. I could never afford, I don't think, a line art by him, but he touched this artistically, and to me that means a lot. It's the best I could hope for. Yeah. But the was it Pat Olive that did the Akira colors? I'm trying to remember early 90s digital colorists, and it's not coming to me. Let me think. Akira colorist. Let me see, because that was Steve Olive. Steve Olive did it. Yep, I was close. Sorry. Steve Olive did a really good job coloring that stuff. Yep, Steve Olive. Yep, you guys knew it faster than me. Thank you. Yeah. All right, moving on. New York Comic Con posted a pretty huge turnout. I'll put it into some context, too. So Reed Pop, they run New York Comic Con, they own it, and they put their name up there now. They stated that this year's New York Comic Con drew a little over 250,000 attendees. Pretty big. And I was wondering, because I was there on Saturday and Sunday, and a little of Friday night, technically, that I snuck into. And Saturday was busy, but I've been there when it's busier. And I sort of wondered, was it, but I think it was just pretty well organized is all. Because I thought about it, and they really did something. They spread certain things out. Like Marvel and DC both had big pavilions, but they were at opposite ends of the exhibition floor. And I think that did help draw people out. Whereas normally, like, they've got like all the publishers in one area, and then they've got sort of like crafters and indie publishers and comic book shops in other, and it kind of like can make certain areas small and certain areas really congested. I think it was just spread out and organized a little better was all. Anyway, 2024 last year had about 200,000 attendees. So this was a big step up, but it was at 250,000 in 2018. And in 2019, just before the pandemic, they were at 260,000. So it's just all the conventions for anything like really, really dropped way down as soon as we had the pandemic and we had those first several years where people were not going out as much. It just was a fact. San Diego Comic-Con, their convention center caps attendance at 135,000. So that's always how many tickets they sell to the event itself. But that is pretty big as a convention because it also spreads out to the whole San Diego Gaslight district. They've got satellite panels in hotel rooms and mezzanines and things like that. They've got off-site art galleries and stuff, and it's all sort of considered part of the convention. So it's a little tricky to know the exact numbers. This is interesting, because Jim obviously had boots on the ground there in Artist Alley. It says Thursday and Friday were busiest for us in Artist Alley. Thursday is the new Saturday. I've seen a lot of people on social media, so it's not scientific, it's my feed, saying that they love going to conventions on the first day because they know it won't be the most hectic, crazy day. And I respect that. Yeah. I wonder how many comic vendors the New York City Fudge Con has. Thank you very much, S-Train. That works for me. I am sort of wearing the same clothes, but keep in mind, it's been a week. I do laundry. I'm not rich. I don't have like a new outfit each day. Here's some other big conventions around the world to compare it to. I'm going to talk about this one later tonight, but the Angouleme International Comics Festival in France last year had over 200,000 visitors. Comiket happens twice a year in Tokyo, and in the summer, their summer was 250,000, so same size. CCXP, I'd love to go to that one. That's in Sao Paulo, Brazil, in the December, and they had 297,000. So there are some bigger conventions or comparable conventions, but New York is very, very big. It's very, very big, which also means it's got a lot of divided interests and stuff that are going there for different reasons. It's not all a complete crossover. Not everybody even goes down to Artist Alley, which is my favorite part, but it is what it is. Oh, thank you for the super chat, Steve. Jim, it was great meeting you. Kickstarted your project. Folks, never hurts to mention, Jim Mafood has a Kickstarter up right now for the Arachnid Enforcer. Oh, you know what I didn't show yet? I finished inking like just some fan art of Arachnid Enforcer while I was on vacation. So I did this little piece of his character. It was, sort of a satire and parody of Spider-Man. And maybe I should, if I did it again, I'd push it further away from Spidey himself. I was having a lot of fun with how I did the webs and stuff like that, making them all sort of patchwork. But anyway, yeah, check that out. Arachnid Enforcer on Kickstarter. Thanks, Steve. Very kind of you. All right. Yeah, I'm like a cartoon character. I'm just always wearing the same thing. All right, what else have I got? Comic sales apparently are way up this year, which generally is the case, but they had eased down from the growth that they had during the pandemic years. A lot more people started buying comics because they were trapped at home for about a year. And it's climbing up in good ways again, which is really cool. Some of this I'm getting from sales data that was shared at the Comics Pro hosted Retailer Day. That's the Wednesday Comic-Con day, which is just for press and people in the industry and stuff like that. It's not a sales day, but it's sort of a day of the convention. Milton Greep spoke. He's been in the industry a long time, follows and tracks data like this. He reported that comic sales in comic shops are up 27% for 2025, and he bases that on sales from Comics Hub. Now, that isn't perfect. That's a system it fluctuates between 100 to 200 comic shops across the country that are reporting what they ordered. So we're using that, and we're interpolating the data to say, okay, this is a big enough pool to guess at the rest of the industry. And they fact check that with whenever industry data for actual sales figures is announced. But anyway, that's where it comes from. 27% from his data. Meanwhile, Prana is a different system that monitors this, sales data for comics. And two people on their podcast, Adam Freeman and Brian Garside, they use a different point of sale system than Comics Hub, also used by more than 100 shops. They show that sales are up 18% in 2025. So 18%, 27%, maybe somewhere in the middle. Either way, seems like a pretty good boost in overall sales for comic shops specifically. That's nice to see. What accounts for it? I just want to say, keep in mind, I'm talking averages. So your comic shop may have very different data. Maybe yours does way better if you're in like a huge metro area. Maybe your comic shop hasn't had that kind of growth, and that brings the average down to what it is. I don't know. I'm just saying these are averages. I'm not saying that every shop experienced the same level of growth. They love to say that the industry is dying, but the industry has always been a bit niche, and it's always had good signs of growth. Anyway, some of the reasons for growth that were shared by everybody include the popularity of things like Absolute, Ultimate, Energon Universe, like fresh jumping on points for new readers or lapsed readers. Like I like Transformers, but I haven't followed it for a long time. Energon Universe, that was a really cool, easy way for me to jump on. Same thing technically with Ninja Turtles recently. Also, the price point on things like compact editions. DC definitely pushing that forward with their compact comics lines for like $10, but Marvel isn't too far behind with what they do a little bigger, $15, sometimes 13, and a bunch of other publishers like Oni and Vault announcing that they're going to do compact editions too. So, when you can get a big chunk of a story at a good price point, it clearly works for manga. And finally, American publishers are starting to go that route. Give people like something affordable, a good chunk like that. That's a great way to get people reading. Great way. Yeah, Marvel's is a little bit more. It's also they printed a bit bigger. Who knows? I mean, if that still sells well, that's still better than like say $25. So they're hitting a middle ground, and maybe they'll need to move closer to what DC does. But I don't know. That's a great point. To say it's growing or shrinking, it's just always transforming. It's a very dynamic form of media, which is part of why I love it. It's very dynamic. Here's some good data on just some books that are selling well. Basically, I'm going to focus on TMNT and Batman just because the publishers don't always share data these days on their month-to-month sales. They used to throughout the 90s and into the 2000s, but they don't really do that anymore. But they like to brag, and some of these numbers are good enough that it's worth sharing. First of all, IDW posted this week that the upcoming Ninja Turtles issue 13, which has a new creative team, that has pre-orders topping 100,000 copies. Very healthy. They did do a blind bag that helps boost things. That is still like a newer gimmick that stores are ordering heavily by. I think they're selling out. Like the stores I go to always sell out of the blind bags, but I don't know if that's the truth nationwide. But the cool thing about their blind bag is they're selling it at cover price. They're not doing a markup to like $10 or something. I like that. Not sure if this is being tracked, but online retailers are finding new ways to move comics like auctions and live streaming. I think it would still be tracked, EJ, because the store could theoretically still be using some of these point of sale systems that get tracked. Because it's not tracking us, the readers, like how many copies we bought. It's tracking what the stores have ordered. And if the stores are selling it in a new way online, they're still ordering it through the distributor, and that's getting tracked. So I'm pretty sure it's being included, but one of those ways could lead to a bigger sales growth than other channels, and we don't know that yet. Or maybe if we do, it just hasn't been shared. Oh, yeah, so Image is also doing it, right. They're doing it with Invincible and Saga, and Monstrous Volume 1 was 10. Was that a compact, or was that just regular trade, though? I don't know. Anyway, other sales figures. Scott Snyder did an AMA, and Ask Me Anything this week on League of Comic Geeks. He was promoting Absolute Batman, DCKO. Nick Dragata was there too. I should give him credit. But Snyder said that DCKO was selling very well, but so was Absolute Batman. And he said that issue 13 had sold nearly 200,000 copies, about the same as DCKO. And DCKO had all those gimmicks, like they had tons of variant covers and blind bags and stuff. Absolute Batman 13, not a new creative team, no blind bag gimmicks. That's just solid word of mouth. That's pretty cool. That tells me that it is getting new readers and lapsed readers. And I'm pretty impressed with that. That's what we want, like some of the top titles to be at consistently. There needs to be a leader that everybody wants to measure up to. And a lot of times in the past, Batman and X-Men have been those titles at different points in the industry. But usually it's one of those two is the top selling book. And right now it seems to be Absolute Batman. The biggest sellers this year that we know about includes Batman #1 that just came out by Matt Fraction and Jorge Jimenez. That was 500,000 copies. That did have a blind bag variant. Battle Beast #1 by Kirkman and Otley with 400,000. That one impresses me more because I don't know that I call Image indie, but they certainly don't have the publicity arm that Marvel and DC theoretically do. They don't have the same backing. That did have a blind bag, but they were basically the first to do it. So it wasn't a gimmick that was being done to death at that point. And then, of course, Batman #158, the first issue of the Hush 2 storyline by Jeff Leb and Jim Lee. It attracted a lot of attention. They got 400,000 copies. I would be very curious to hear what the last one was, though, because that's not getting a lot of great responses. I didn't know about this news that there was a Ninja Turtles Magic the Gathering set, but I did see that at Comic-Con. They had a turtle van branded with the Magic the Gathering logo in the sort of not vestibule or anything, but sort of in a parking lot in front of the convention center in New York. That's the kind of thing, Spider-Man and Ninja Turtles having exclusive Magic the Gathering sets that could theoretically get somebody like me that played Magic about, 15 or 20 years ago. It could get me back into it because I'd just be amused at the novelty of playing as some of my favorite characters. I would be curious about that. Get caught up with some of the current mechanics. I'm sure it wouldn't be too hard to pick it back up, but I'm sure there's also a lot of new mechanics. It seems to work, I get it. Do you think Hush 2 will redeem itself? Boy, I really don't, because it's we got what? We got 4 issues of the first 6 that are going to come out, and then they said at some point they'll do another 6, yet to be announced when. But it's like, if you've got a little more than half of it done and it really isn't exciting anybody, even if it's like just half, I don't see that turning around in such a big way that I could go back and go like, well, this made me reanalyze those first 3 issues and like it more. It's an interesting question. It could improve, but redeem itself? No, it's already like, it lost me. It lost me. Let's see. Flying into Seattle tomorrow for my first anniversary trip. Congratulations. That's awesome. If I happen to meet you out and about, you're getting a sugar-free high five. I'll consider that. Boom, our virtual one. I hope you enjoy Seattle. I hope you enjoy it. Spider-Man Ninja Turtles comics crossover should happen. It should, but if Marvel is going to work with IDW, please, 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 can we get a Daredevil TMNT collaboration first? I'm sure Eastman would do something for it. Maybe we could even get Peter Laird back on board. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. Here's some fallout from a previous news story about an artist selling his original art. So Red Hood, that was going to be an ongoing monthly book by Gretchen Felker Martin and artist Jeff Spokes. DC basically had to cancel it when Felker Martin made some comments celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. Do I blame her? Not really. Do I think that DC did the right thing canceling that book? Yeah, you can't really have somebody like that representing you. They knew what they were getting into, but it was a bridge too far. They had to cancel the book. I get that. But Spokes had drawn 3 more issues than the one that got published. Also got recalled, but 3 unpublished issues. So he's currently selling the pages on his website in batches. Some of them are as little as $90, $120. He's a great artist. I think he did the promo art for the DCKO stuff where they're working in characters from IDW and Dynamite. I'm pretty sure that was Jeff Spokes. He's a really good artist. He did the who's the British chick that leads the Authority? Jenny Sparks. He just did the Jenny Sparks book, and that was really good art. That was really good art. Anyway, there's his website, jeffspokes.bigcartel.com. You can get some unpublished Red Hood art. I feel like that could really appreciate, but also it just looks good, and that's a totally reasonable price to get from an artist like this. So could be something you guys are into. I just wanted to share it. And I want the artist to, he's not going to be able to get paid royalties and stuff like that. DC, I'm sure, paid him his page rate, but he's got no opportunity to make like residuals and stuff. So, he deserves to get as much as he can for this art that's already done. It's too bad. It's really too bad when a whole creative team loses out on work. Cam, don't be rude. This guy's like a hard worker. He's just the artist. So let's talk about Batman going political, but obviously that's not quite the truth. We're going to talk about what's happened behind the scenes if you haven't heard about this already. I guess I'll share my opinions. So, on Friday, Daniel Warren Johnson drew a few sketches at New York Comic Con through his art rep, Felix Art. Felix had posted some. Daniel Warren Johnson posted this one to both his Twitter and Instagram pages. Got a lot of views, a lot of likes. It shows the absolute version of Batman choking out an ICE officer, something I think is definitely in the zeitgeist right now. They walk around with masks, abducting people off the streets. No due process, it seems. It's scary. It's scary as hell. And Absolute Batman is not this guy that's best friends with Commissioner Gordon. He's such a different character. It's like, it fits, it was just a sketch. I think he just did it sort of for fun. It was something that was being talked about in the zeitgeist. He released it. I get it. I get where he was going. It's very cool sketch. Congrats to whoever owns it. And it's sort of based, by the way, he did a bunch of sketches, but he's got one in the upcoming Absolute Batman annual where he's choking out a white supremacist. So this was just sort of like a riff on something he had recently drawn. So in response, writer Chuck Dixon, who I think still holds the record for writing the most Batman, at least the most consecutive Batman. I mean, he did like about maybe a little over 100 issues in the 90s, including, of course, the really popular Nightfall era, No Man's Land. That was Chuck Dixon, and he did Robin and stuff like that. And he did a lot of Punisher. But he commissioned a piece showing Absolute Batman on the exact opposite side. And it's sort of done in that like hack political cartoonist way where like the character actually has to like wear a sign to explain like that he is now part of ICE. I can't imagine Batman ever collaborating with them. And these people that he's grabbing are wearing signs that say Antifa, which no one has ever done. I promise no one in the world has ever worn a shirt that says Antifa. I just don't think it exists. If it does, I don't believe it's real, okay? It's a very different take on things. I want to comment, it's not that it really has anything to do with the story, but the art, I should credit the artist. It's by a guy named Sergio Cariello. He's a Brazilian immigrant who came here to learn at the Kubert School, which I think is very cool. He's a fine artist, and, he took commissioned work. Yeah, Chuck Dixon is a writer, not an artist, so he commissioned it from this guy. If you're not familiar, if you look at Dixon's social media, like his Twitter, it's pretty much all far right-wing memes. It's just memes. It's like he talks a little bit about what he's got to promote. It's lots of memes. Like this guy's MAGA-headed. This guy's totally red pill. And in the responses to his art, he said that anyone that was arguing with him are bots. Maybe these days actually on Twitter, like Twitter does have a bot problem with people just saying something opposite of whatever you're saying. I don't know. And then he also said that Antifa is actually fascist, which doesn't make any sense to me. To me, it doesn't make sense. Oh, I don't really know anything about the artist. I only looked up like his background of like his work history. He's far right too. Well, that would make sense that they know each other then. That would make sense. I mean, Chuck Dixon's had a very successful career, but he's 71 and he must just sit chronically in front of, like what are some of those channels like Newsmax or something? He must, because like that's all he posts. I don't know that Daniel was necessarily trying to start a huge conversation on social media. I think he was doing something that was kind of just in the zeitgeist. I really do. But to his credit, he stood behind it on his recent live stream. He's got a weekly live stream where he draws, gives tips, talks a little bit about what he's working on, gives us hints. We can see all sorts of like the tools that he uses. It's a really educational show for learning how to be an artist. It's really cool in that regard. Let's see. In 2025, dead internet theory is real. Dead ass. You speaking in that leak speak that I don't get. No, Chuck Dixon is not Brazilian. I said it's written right there. Sergio Cariello is the artist from Brazil. Anyway. Antifa stands for anti-fascist, which I don't think anybody really uses as their own label, but at the same time, like that, the label's pretty self-descriptive. So I don't know. It's weird, man. He I don't know if he changed, Chuck Dixon, or if he was always like this. I feel like if he was this argumentative as he seems to be on social media, he would have. I can't imagine him working for that long at like major publishers. So I have to imagine he changed at some point. I just have to imagine. But yeah, deadass is New Yorker slang, like wicked. Saying I do this from Hawaii. Yo, that's wicked pissa. Anyway, it's just getting talked about a lot on specifically Twitter. Because, like, just to be clear, this had something like 11.5 million views, the original piece on Twitter today. And on Insta, it's got, in the thousands, not the millions. Well, no, you know what the difference is? I just realized I was looking at the likes because I don't think Instagram shows impressions. I think Twitter shows these like views, but that's people that even just scroll past it in their feed. That counts as a view, like even if you don't notice it. So Twitter has a weird way of like showing their stats, to be honest. It's you can figure out ratios, I suppose, like ratios to views, but I don't think it's really very accurate. Yeah, a lot of people telling me Dixon is a cranky guy, and he's been like this for a long time. Wow. We'll move on because I think I've laid out what the story is. To be honest, I don't think this will affect anything for comics because, like I say, both of these guys posted it to their personal accounts. I don't think that it quite rises to the level where DC would say that it's maligning their characters. It's on the edge. I don't think it's a big deal, to be honest. I don't think it's a big deal. This is an interesting one. Batman the World has assembled a really cool team for a new story. So I don't know if you remember, 2021, DC did an anthology called Batman the World, where they hired actual writers and artists from different countries around the world to use the character, set it in their country, tell an original story using their character. Cool idea. And it was translated into a lot of different languages, too. Let me get this. To be fair, or to be frank, Batman would do more good donating his money to ways to rehabilitate his rogues gallery and created more to the community instead of being Batman. And I think that as time goes on, that's definitely become more of a statement where they do say that, like, Bruce Wayne donates millions. The way that DC can still make Batman kind of work in their main continuity is that Gotham is a fictional city. And so, it's not like he can, if it was in New York or LA, you'd be like, yeah, why can't a billionaire fix that? But it's Gotham, and Gotham is weird. So you can sort of like, you can play looser. Plus, might be part of why Absolute Batman connects with people, where he flat out just is not rich. He does not have those kind of assets to help people. But I think that they generally say these days he does both. And he's just dealing more with super criminals than common crooks. But it is a fair point where you're like, geez, the power fantasy where it was created sort of for kids, at a certain point, yes, there are logical breaking points. And you have to either address them in a very clever way that like really is clever, or you have to kind of ignore some of this stuff that has flying people and people in costumes that are completely bulletproof or can run faster than the speed of light and somehow still see and hear things. It's a fair argument. Like, it's something that would come to mind. I get that, but I think DC handles it pretty well. I haven't, and that's a book that everybody's telling me to read, is The Power Fantasy. I'll check it out at some point. All right. Argentina did not get a story in Batman the World, but DC just announced that they're getting one, as they announced this in conjunction with the Argentina Comic-Con, which is in the first week of December. I think it's like the 5th and 6th, or 6th and 7th, somewhere around there. The creative team is a guy named artist Salvador Sanz, writer Luciano Saraceno. They're going to bring Batman to Buenos Aires, in which a devastated Buenos Aires becomes the stage for Batman's next battle, facing a mysterious and unknown force that threatens the city. I think that's really cool that, you know, it's getting something like this. The preview art looks really, really cool to me. And Argentina has an amazing history with comics, both what they've created for themselves, artists who have come from there to work on American comics, and a lot of European artists who've just moved there and still continue to make their comics in Europe and stuff like that. It's really cool. Oh, wow. All the support. This is, let's see. No different from billionaires flying into space and doing a U-turn after 10 minutes of space travel. Exhaust from rockets is trickle-down economics. Only nice thing I can say about any of that is it's nice that William Shatner got to sort of go into space. That's like the only nice thing I can say about all that stuff. Otherwise, yeah, that is just rich people playing with toys, daydreaming about getting away from all of us. Like, you know what? Fine. If you want to go into space, go into space. Stay. I guess he's a letterer from Argentina, Randy? Lucas Gattoni? I'm not familiar with that name. But I'm bad at names. Have you worked with Lucas before? Eternaut Batman? Yeah, that could be cool. Eduardo Risso, I'm pretty sure, is he's from Argentina, right? He's really good. There's lots of cool Argentine comics. But the Eternaut is one of my favorites from there. That would be cool if Lucas letters it. Would Eternaut's author dislike Batman as a concept? I think he'd be really for absolute Batman, to be honest. I really do. Yeah, I think Hector Esterheld, I think he'd be behind the ethos of the absolute version of Batman. It's just speculation, but you know, he was definitely anti-fascist, and it probably cost him his life. You know, he got disappeared. We don't know, but we kind of know. I did not read Super Creep Show. I didn't. Was that like a creep show that Skybound released with superhero stuff in it? Or just a big version of Creep Show, like an annual? Oh, it's okay. I mean, I made this one pretty political with my thumbnail, so I get it. I get that it's going to bring in opinions. I'm just trying not to like let it get too out of control either. But everybody's being very, very polite to me. I appreciate it. I think this looks like a cool book. Hellboy's family battles for hell. Sort of a fun little story here that I just thought I'd promote. Mike Mignola's teaming up with his brother Todd Mignola. They did a book before once. And artist Warwick Johnson Cadwell. It's a story including Hellboy's brothers and their mother. It's titled The Crown, A Tale of Hell. So what is it? Well, Mike Mignola said. He says, Todd came to me with the idea of writing something about Hellboy's brothers. It never would have occurred to me to do more with those guys, but it didn't take much prodding. Brothers writing about brothers in a somewhat complicated family dynamic. Once we got going, it was almost too easy and fun, and so much fun that I could only imagine it drawn by Warwick. And then Todd added that it is set in the past, in the 16th century. It also includes Hellboy's father and his uncle, and all of his family is just trying to get a hold of this supernatural crown while Satan sleeps. Very cool. Yeah, I think I talked about it a little, like in this sort of like after the news, after the reviews, like in the last 2 weeks. Season 2 as a whole, I really, really, really liked. Some incredible performances, some great ideas. The finale, like most people, I think it fell a little short of working well as a full finale. It just felt like a couple characters sort of jump forward in a character arc really fast, and it left on some cliffhangers. which are fine, except that James Gunn said that he has no plans for a season 3 of the show. So I don't think everybody following the movies would know about that. I don't know if that makes sense to have done it that way, but I really admired some of what John Cena did. He has a scene where he emotionally breaks down in like the maybe like the 7th out of 8 episodes, and it was really convincing and devastating. Mike does still draw, but covers. Like, he drew this cover, and he doesn't do a whole lot of interiors. He mostly writes, and then with his free time, he does covers, he paints. So he does still make art. He just doesn't have a lot of interest in the sort of grind of doing interior sequentials. So when he does, it's kind of special, but that's not very much anymore, just to be clear. Yeah, it's mostly covers and in his own work, which is mostly like he does sketches and watercolor paintings and stuff. Yeah. You know what? Maybe it would. Maybe it would lead to a Checkmate series, and he just hasn't revealed that. That's a good point. All right. Well, we'll see. Right. He did Bowling with Corpses. Now, you know, that got a bunch of good acclaim. We already talked last week about how Marvel confirmed the Ultimate Universe is really, really ending when they get to their 5-issue Ultimate End story in like December or January for a few months. But writer Dennis Camp explained the sort of behind the scenes stuff this past week, and just helps explain it in a little bit more detail. I thought it was pretty interesting. So Dennis is the writer of The Ultimates, and he posted a really big explanation on Twitter about why it's ending. So he started with, like, these are all quotes. Okay, the end of the Ultimate Universe from my perspective. It's true that the original plan was not to end the universe. A lot of my run is setting up characters I hoped would go on past me. And I think I've made that clear and obvious, but John, he means Jonathan Hickman, was ending his run at 24. That was always the case. He was done. Jonathan Hickman was brought on as the architect of this series, and he had a 2-year contract. Peach Momoko and Brian Edward Hill, Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Black Panther, were both ending their stories when the maker got out as well. That was their decision, according to what I've been told, my interactions with them, and it makes sense. Think about it. Peach is writing and drawing every issue for 24 issues. That's insane. She works like 20 hours a day on that book. No joke. That's true. She's the hero of the line. She deserves a break if she wants one. Probably not. And then he explained how some others got dragged in. He said Wolverine was only meant to be 12 issues. Then it got extended to 16. The other creators were offered more issues to run alongside Endgame, but they decided, but they declined, and I saw that happen. The only person who planned on continuing was me. So basically everybody fulfilled their contract and they were ready to wrap it up, but they weren't necessarily intending to end their books originally. Initially, still very early, those books were going to end as those creators left, and Ultimates would have continued. And new books launched. I was pushing for Hawkeye. Guardians was discussed. Said Camp. This was all very vague. But then Will Moss came to me, he's an editor, and said, hey, I think we're going to end it. End it. This was a long time ago, at least a year before now, I think, but I'd have to check. It's not because the books are too woke. If it were that, they'd interfere with the writing of it, which they haven't. Or because the main line is jealous, this is silly. Money is money to them. But because everything seemed to be coming to a natural conclusion. In other words, Marvel had hired these people with sort of a 2-year contract. These people were all planning on giving some closure to their stories. The only one who wasn't was Dennis Camp. But when he realized everybody else was, it kind of made sense to just sort of tell a complete finite story with a definitive end. And I think that that's okay. I think it's a little crazy business-wise, but story-wise, I respect it. Story-wise. Yeah, if it ends on a high note, like it seems to be, it'll probably be remembered fondly for a while. And these creators, these artists and writers will get more work from it, which is nice. I'm glad he was transparent and helped explain this to me. In a way, I'm sad, and in another way, I'm kind of grateful that I can sort of read a complete story like this and not feel like I have to continue past with like new creators. I kind of like it, to be honest. Yeah, business-wise, I'm confused. Why, but reader-wise, I'm happy. I'm happy. I liked Peter Parker in this, but as time went on, I just wasn't connecting with the book enough. But I get it now, a little bit more now. It is telling a little bit more of a focused story than trying to set up element after element after element to bring us into a world. It was telling a story with this family and some very specific villains. If it continues to sell well, yes, I think you could expect a compendium with a bunch of it. I'm excited to see what people like Dennis Camp and Peach Momoko do next. I mean, I know Dennis Camp has his creator-owned books too, like Assorted Crisis Events. He's doing Absolute Martian Manhunters. He's a great writer. I don't know what Peach is doing next, but I'm excited to find out. Maybe we'll find out because she is attending Tokyo Comic-Con. Maybe by right around there, she'll be comfortable announcing if she's got something coming up. Maybe. Daredevil Season 2 got a release date. It's official. So Disney announced this, that Daredevil is going to return to Disney Plus March 4th. Not too much longer. Almost half a year, I guess. A little ways. I wish it was here, but I liked Season 1. And I think Season 2 has the potential to be even stronger because they did redo a bunch of Season 1. And it still kind of worked. At New York Comic-Con, Disney shared an exclusive trailer. You could see a leaked version, but it looks terrible, by the way. The Tokyo Comic-Con I'm talking about is in December. Jim Mafood's going to be there. He's got a table. And West Coast Avengers is going too. And Peach is going to be there. She's got a table with her husband. Anyway, the trailer, this news is out there. Shows Jessica Jones is there. We kind of already knew that. Looks like a bigger role for Karen Page. Good for Deborah Ann Woll. She's good in that role. They had a scene with Foggy Nelson. Now, that could easily be a flashback, but I think that there's a chance that they could be using an Ed Brubaker story where Foggy faked his death with the police. That's a long shot, but it's a chance. There's a chance. Peach's next project is going to be awesome. I'm contributing a little something to it. Top secret. Oh, man. You think you get along with these people and you don't get privy to the secrets. But you know what? Even if I did, I'd have kept it a secret too. I had to keep like Energon Universe a secret for like a year. That was tough. But I'm not into like breaking the news. I'm into just talking about it with you guys and like giving my opinions. Oh, Jim met Peach very early on in her career as she started to do work in like comics and fanzine type publications. Jim met Peach and Yo at some early conventions that they attended. She'd been painting for a while, but yeah, Jim's known her for a long time. So that's nice. I'm good at breaking wind. What can I say? I do what I'm good at, all right? I do what I'm good at. I'm the windbreaker. People think that that's a popular manga and anime right now. It's based on me, folks. I'm the windbreaker. Yes, it's a kick puncher omnibus. What else have we got about Daredevil? Punisher is also expected to be in season 2. Now I'm going on a tangent here. He's also got the TV special that's coming out right around the time season 2 comes out, probably right after. And then he's going to be in Spider-Man 4. Current speculation is that Sadie Sink, we've all been wondering, is she playing, Gwen Stacy or, actual Mary Jane Watson? Is she playing Carly Cooper? Is she playing, like all these love interests from Spider-Man's past? But now people are like, well, wait a minute. We know Punisher's in it. We know she has red hair. She's been seen on set in combat boots, which isn't much. But people are like, well, wait a minute. She could be playing Punisher's ally, who also wears a Punisher shirt at one point, Rachel Cole Alvis. And that was a character created by Greg Rucka and Marco Cicchetto back in 2011. Also a former Marine that goes through like basically her family getting killed by criminals and sort of becomes Punisher. That could be really cool. Be patient. I might talk about that in a little bit. Yeah, Punisher's getting one of those TV specials like Guardians of the Galaxy and Werewolf by Night got. And John Bernthal was involved in crafting the story. So he's getting sort of like a TV movie almost. It's not extra crispy. I think that's just based on his outfit in the Shadowlands. I don't think they're adapting that story, but they are giving him a new costume, I guess. That was something that was shown. So he's not burnt. He's just got a black costume, but he's finally got the DD initials, which I like. All right. Japan is cracking down on two things: piracy and AI. Let me talk about that. The Japanese government, the government itself, formally asked OpenAI not to allow Sora 2, which debuted on October 1st. They asked them not to allow it to infringe on their copyrights. They had a press conference this week. Minoru Kyuchi, he's the Minister of State for Intellectual Property and Artificial Intelligence Strategy. He specifically called Japan's manga and anime, quote, irreplaceable treasures. Meanwhile, that's what I've got for AI, but then piracy-wise, Shueisha, Weekly Shonen Jump, they do One Piece, they do My Hero Academia, they do all the popular stuff. They're big. They won a big lawsuit this week against a manga piracy site that was called Manga Jikan, which basically is still out there, I think, just under a different domain. But they're fighting a battle against it. Their argument used DMCA rules, and what they're trying to do is get a subpoena to get the identity of the owner of the site. Because right now he's got lawyers defending him anonymously, which I guess you can do. The subpoena was served specifically to Cloudflare, and the defense was that this should be quashed since Cloudflare was just redirecting the domain. It wasn't actually hosting this stuff. But here's where Shueisha's lawyers won. They pointed out that Cloudflare does cache these pages. So technically they were temporarily hosting them. And the judge agreed. And they're going to have to, Cloudflare is going to have to release who was hosting all this stuff. So somebody is facing a big lawsuit against a very rich Japanese company. Yikes. Yikes. Would you download a car? You know what? Who is it? Mandy, what's her name? From The Office, that played Kelly. What was her name? That actress had a great stand-up bit where she says, you know what? I would steal a car if I could steal it just by touching it. And also the original owner got to keep their car, and I just got my own car. It was pretty good. What was her name? With a 3D printer, you can. That was a long time ago. He's already taken it down. He took it down a long time ago as soon as they started coming after him. So he's not getting away with it. It doesn't look like it. It is not looking good lawsuit-wise. I just thought it was interesting that in 1 week, Japan did both of these things. They're going after both OpenAI and piracy sites. They take their intellectual property, I think, in some ways, much more seriously than we do here in the U.S. Yeah, it's different. It's different because we won't really allow, say, fan published comics using intellectual property like Batman or something, right? Like that would be cracked down on. A fan art piece, maybe not. It's not big enough. But a comic that you published maybe even 100 issues of or something that was like just supposed to be not like a satire, but like actually be Batman, yeah, you're probably going to get like somebody going after you. In Japan, they won't go after that if it's small enough, and they'll consider that like training and like upcoming talent. So they're very different in a lot of ways. I agree. I don't think AI is here to stay. I think it's been a huge investment on a lot of these tech companies to make it attractive and appealing, with the thought that if they get enough of a user base, then they can finally charge what it costs them to run, which is a lot. But I don't think anybody will really have much interest in paying for it. We've had search engines, and search engine isn't necessarily as robust as what these large language models can do for a search, but I think we'd prefer free. I really do. Berserk is incredible. Love it. No, they're losing money on it now. They're losing money on it now. And I don't think that people will want to pay for most of it. I really don't. I also think that some of these lawsuits from like Warner Brothers and Shueisha is going to start enforcing intellectual property laws. Because right now you could use Sora 2 apparently to just say like, these two anime characters make like a short animation of them fighting, and it will. And it's not like a knockoff. It just makes them. All right. Got a little more news. This looks like fun. I wish I could go to something like this. Tillie Walden and Zoe Thorogood are two artists I really admire. They're among others in an art gallery show right now. So, Thought Bubble looks like a really cool comic convention that the UK hosts every year. Right now, through the end of April, basically, there's this event, Vision and Labor, Making Comics, the Art of Avery Hill Publishing. It's an exhibit at the Mercer Art Gallery in Harrogate, and it's going to showcase original art from 16 comic creators. It's going to include art by people we might know, Zoe Thorogood, Tillie Walden. She does not just kids comics, but also did the popular Walking Dead Clementine trilogy. And it shows their original art pages and the finished comic. And it's designed to give people an appreciation for the work that goes into creating a story, which I love that idea. It looks really interesting. If I lived in the UK, I definitely would go to this. Yeah. I'd like to go to Thought Bubble itself sometime. So, hey, Thought Bubble, if you want to invite me to speak on a panel, I'll go. I think the UK has a lot of respect for comics, and they don't always get the media coverage that they deserve. I think that there's a lot of really cool British comics. And I know that the two artists that I just mentioned are American. Oh, wait a minute. Are they both? Yeah. No, hold on. I'm sorry. Zoe is British. What was I thinking? I've met her, and all of a sudden I was like, wait, she had an accent. Zoe's incredible, though. Actually, so is Tillie, though. Then there's a bunch of other artists. I didn't have time to list them all, but they're both really, really cool. Wanted to put that on people's radar. The Angouleme Festival in France, meanwhile, is still facing protests. I'll try to summarize a pretty big story. Wait. Outside of the USA, Japan, and France, where would you say has the strongest comic culture? There's a bunch of contenders. The UK, Italy, Spain, Canada, Brazil, Argentina, India, These are all massive comic book centers. The Philippines. Who's the next biggest after those three? Probably the UK. But Belgium's way up there. Because these things like Canada and USA probably get lumped together, and Belgium and France probably get lumped together, but technically they're separate. Probably in terms of output, I think, oh geez, it could be India actually. We just 197 countries again tonight, okay? But a lot of it's almost unfair because Europe prints in different languages, but in some ways Europe is almost one whole ecosystem in some ways, bande dessinée is sort of the biggest within that. But if we aren't counting Italy and Spain and the UK, like what are we doing there, Yeah, Tintin is technically Belgian. So yeah, Africa has a lot of interest, I see, in trying to make things happen in South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya especially. But I don't think that like any of them really publish enough to like compete yet. No, not at all. 40 is nothing. Did I tell you guys that I saw some original Peo art of Smurfs when I was in New York at the Philippe Lebon Gallery? The gallery owner, Philippe, showed me his back room, and he had a piece by Peo of Smurfs. Oh, that's a fantastic point. I can't believe I overlooked that, but think of all the webtoons coming out of South Korea right now. Whoo. That's a great argument. I don't know in terms of like sales and copies published, which would be number 4. But we sort of operate within, I won't call them like quite the same area, but we're ecosystems, like Canada and the US are both crossing over creators and publishers and printers a lot. Does Turkey have much of one? I mean, Turkey's a massive country, but I guess I didn't realize if they have a big comic field. I don't know. It's an interesting question. And Angouleme is a French comics festival. It's not just a weekend. It's basically a week where the whole town celebrates comics. And you can even go into like some of their castles and stuff like that. Jack Kirby fought in a battle in World War II, not very far from there. It's really not too far from where the rest of his whole platoon got killed during World War II. And the only reason Jack Kirby survived was because he was a scout that would go ahead and map out areas, and he got some really bad frostbite in his fingers. He almost lost like his hands and feet, and he got like flown to a medical center. The rest of his platoon all got wiped out really close to Angouleme in a battle. I'd love to go to this festival, but they've got big problems. Let me explain. So they were mired in controversy when a report in January came out, and it had allegations of all sorts of mismanagement by the company that runs the festival, as well as the cover-up of, and I'm only saying it this way to not get demonetized, an SA. That stands for something bad. In July, the management company behind the festival announced that it would open up bids for a new company to potentially run the festival starting in 2025. And I think it's for a term of like 4 years. So that period came to a close this past week. That's why we're talking about it now. So there were about like 6 big contenders that were added. They get to make their arguments for why they should take over running this show on October 31st, and a decision is going to get made on November 8th. However, there was a new news article over in France, and the current report shows that the existing management company, the one that everybody is not happy with is still the favorite to win, like, because they're in the running to still run it. That's some good English. Anyway, it's led to a bunch of former Grand Prix winners of their awards saying that they were going to boycott the festival if this current management company stays in place. Already 2 big publishers in France have announced that they are not going to attend. So it could really, really hurt the festival if they keep their current management company, which is called something like 9E Art Plus. Pretty bad. Pretty bad. Yeah, I wish sometimes I had, like, because I can say, like, all sorts of swears, but you say certain words, and it can, like, literally get flagged, and you can get demonetized or at least limited, and it's frustrating. It's already, I'll just tell you, you know what? I'll just tell you some numbers, because it's right in the middle here. This is only my most engaged audience watching. I wouldn't really announce this on my main channel. A few years ago, a good month for my channel, I might get YouTube ad revenue of at least $5,000. These days, it's $1,000. So you can see ad revenue has dropped a lot. It's frustrating. The algorithm doesn't pick up videos the same way it used to. I still love what I do. And I'm not trying to share that with the world. There might be other YouTubers that do comics that know how to monetize themselves better than I am. Some of that might be on me, but I still think that that's a huge decline. And here's the thing, my subscriber base is still going up, you know? So I know that overall I'm still attracting more new viewers than losing old ones. I'm not a declining channel. That's separate. I'm going to keep going. There's going to be an auction. And normally I don't talk too much about stuff that's going for auction because it's like for rich people. It's speculation. It doesn't interest me a whole lot unless it's like a really important piece of art history or they're doing something different, which is this. John Cassaday, late great artist. A bunch of his art is being auctioned to benefit his family, which I think is beautiful. Heritage Auctions is working with Albert Moy Art. He's an art dealer, and Dynamite's Nick Barucci, who was a really good friend of John. And they've organized an auction, and the goal is to provide the funds to John Cassaday's family, his partner, his sister, people like that. The auction also has pieces of original art donated by friends of John, people like Jim Lee, Liam Sharp, Paul Pope. Really cool art is up. Here's what's unique. Heritage Auctions is forgoing the area where they make most of their profits. They're charging something called a buyer's premium, which is always in there. You could consider it a tax or a fee to do business. It's always listed what it is. It's like, but what they're doing is they're providing 100% of the hammer price. That's the final bid that they like close the auction on. They're providing all of that to Cassaday's family. That's not normal. That's not normal at all. It also has some really special pieces. This is the cover, for instance, to Planetary #1, and Cassaday never sold that because he considered that, you know, his signature series. It was a really important piece to his career. He was very proud of it, as he should be. He always kept that, but it's going to get auctioned now. I mean, the family doesn't need to keep all of the art, you know? Yeah. The auction is also going to include art that Cassaday owned. We're talking original art by guys like Jack Kirby, Michael Golden, I recently did an episode on. Russ Heath, I've done an episode on. So he owned, you know, his fair share of really cool art. And so there's a lot of stuff up right now. It's on Heritage Auctions. And it's still probably more than most of us can afford, but just know that ultimately this is a unique auction that is designed to help his family, and I think that that's a kind of beautiful thing. It's really, really cool. It's really cool, and I hope it helps and benefits his partner and his sister and any other family members that it's going to. But I think that that's beautiful. Yeah. It's really cool. Oh, wow. Yeah, Cassaday and Pacheco. Pacheco was sad. It is nice. Oh, no, I'm really sorry to hear that. That's too bad. Yeah, very sad. Oh, just so that you know, as of today, there are 17 days left for this auction, okay? So gives you an idea of what's left. But a little over 2 weeks, you can take a look. Maybe there's a piece within your budget, and you don't have to feel bad like you're giving it all to an auction house or anything like that. I was just amazed at the numbers on this, folks, because I talked earlier about the attendance to conventions. I talked about the sales figures for comic shops. I talked about the sales figures for some of the biggest books this year. There was also a humongous Kickstarter, Murder Drones. It pulled in just shy of $1.7 million. And that means it takes the number 4 spot for highest earning comic book campaigns on Kickstarter. Ahead of it, we've got 2 compendiums by Skybound, the Transformers and G.I. Joe compendiums. They did 4.65 and 3.79 million. Very big. There was also the Good Omens graphic novel from the Terry Pratchett estate, and that got 2.4 million pounds. I didn't do the calculation in dollars, sorry. But that was number 3. And Murder Drones, very new property for Oni Press. That's huge. That's huge. Its initial goal was like almost comedically low, $5,000. They hit that within 5 minutes. The writer is Wyatt Kennedy. Artist is Joe Mi Gyung, and they wrote a 136-page graphic novel about worker drone robots, what they do with themselves after there's an apocalypse that like basically freezes humanity. I haven't watched it, so I don't really know Murder Drones. I know that it's popular. This makes me wonder if they did a comic of, say, K-pop Demon Hunters on Kickstarter, what would that earn? I feel like that would be like a $7 million thing right there. I don't know. It's so popular. Oh, that's always nice to I appreciate the support. Yeah, if you hit like, that really helps the channel. Thank you. All right. Yeah. Hey, we all have blind spots. Like I say, I haven't watched it, but it's popular. I think it's on Netflix. Anyway. Oh, thank you, Pasta Gene. Like your shows, and the live stream is worth a night of sleep. Skull. Thank you. Yeah, they did something like that, it would sell so well. Oh, yeah, Wyatt Kennedy did Knights, and I think that's in the works for a potential animation, too. So he must have some good connections in animation. It's on YouTube. Excuse me. That's part of why it's so popular. Everybody's on YouTube. No, this is the first. So, a couple of upcoming indie books that caught my eye. Thought I'd pass on. The link for both of these is in my description below the video. There's 10 days left to pledge to the Dracula 3 Kickstarter. Now that is closing out a trilogy of the secret history of Dracula. It's written by Matt Wagner, art by Kelly Jones. That's kind of a dream team for Dracula. 3 big graphic novels they did about this. If you're curious, I know they did an interview on West Coast Avengers this past week. Really respect both creators a lot. And yeah, I love Grendel. I loved Kelly Jones' covers during the Nightfall era of Batman. And he's a good fit for a character like Dracula for sure. Anyway, there's the link for that. But like I say, it's also in the description below. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then the other thing, oh, nice. Bobby D just got volume 1. Well, you can get the previous volumes too if you, for some reason, didn't get them before and you want to read the whole thing. Yeah, it's a good fit. It's a good fit. Really good team. But Evermind, you can get the first 6 issues of that. So essentially a graphic novel's full of stories. That's by Sean Chen and actor, martial artist, and apparently writer Daniel Wu. But Sean did like everything in that book. Sean like wrote, drew, I think colored, maybe even lettered it. I got to double check. Hey, Sean's actually here. Well, now I feel like a little like embarrassed. I wasn't trying to like talk about you with you here. That's really cool. That's really cool, Sean. Then I got to meet him at Comic-Con. He was super, super nice. Let's see. 17 days left on that Kickstarter. And the premise for that, I'll break it down for you the best I can. There's a scientist and his daughter. She's a bit of a firebrand, a little bit of a, politically involved. They get trapped in mech bodies, specifically for an amusement park gorilla and a pleasure bot, I'll call it. And so the military is hunting them down. They want the technology and everything. But, I mean, come on. A father-daughter story, a big gorilla and a pleasure bot on the run from the military. Pretty cool. Pretty cool, in my opinion. There's the link for that. And again, it's in the description below. So top one has 10 days left. Bottom one has 17 days left. Those were both things that caught my eye that I think could interest you. And I think that's it that I've got for news. Yeah. Let's see. I'll just do this. There. I've been trying to talk about it more and more. I can't cover everybody's indie Kickstarter, but some of them catch my eye and look different enough and cool enough that I want to talk about it and spread the word. And I'll try to do, at some point soon, another PO box opening and eventually do another sort of like live thing where people can just promote their indie comics. Very hard to give everybody time. Like literally every day somebody asks if they can be interviewed on my channel, and I'm just like, I hate having to say no. It's so tough. Amusement Park Gorilla is pretty, yeah. I missed a previous super chat. Hold on. Jeez. Oh, you're right. Excuse me. Thank you, Retro Wolf. I'm sorry. Hey, Chris, will you be doing an episode about the decline of Amazing Spider-Man and what can be done to fix it? I think it would be way too premature to do something like that, to be honest. I know that it has had plenty of criticism, but I don't think that the sales figures show a significant decline. If they did, they'd have put a new creative team on like that. So there is a vocal, I would say, minority that didn't like the Zeb Wells era, but he was on that book for a long time, and every time Marvel talked about the sales, they were pretty strong. So I don't think it would be fair to call it a decline. Now, I'm not against having that opinion if you didn't care for the story. I know I didn't care enough for the story. I didn't continue to read it monthly. I started because of the John Romita Jr. art, and it wasn't for me. I did not follow that era. So I don't disagree that it wasn't like their best. I don't disagree with that. But I think overall, like if I look at the history, I mean, I've been reading comics for a long time now, and I don't think it shows an overall decline the same way that, for instance, I would argue the Clone Wars was kind of a really big low point for the series because it just dragged on for 2 years. Again, though, that's pretty subjective because the sales weren't necessarily bad. So, are we going to talk objectively about sales, or are we going to talk subjectively about an opinion on the story? Those are two very different points is all. Yeah. That said, I am thinking of doing something on Spider-Man very soon. So hopefully that will scratch a little bit of the itch that you have, and I appreciate the support. I saw last week that you met Wendy and Richard Pini. Did you get to have a real conversation? It was short. They were ready to call it a night after the awards show, which is fine. But they said that they would be interested in doing an interview. That they've got something big to announce in a couple months or something like that. That would interest me. I've always wanted to do an episode about ElfQuest and its unique place as a indie book. And there's a lot to talk about with ElfQuest beyond even just sort of trying to explain what makes the story so appealing, it is something that was like self-published. It was published through Marvel's creator-owned imprint. It was published at Dark Horse as a creator-owned book. And I really admire when a creator can move around like that to the best outlet for them, but still retain what they own. That's really cool. I'm sure it'll happen. Yeah. So I have the contact info for their social media guy, and yeah, I got to have a little bit of a nice conversation with them, and that was nice. That was really nice. Tell you what, let's do some comic book reviews of stuff that came out, because I've got some opinions. Now you're gonna get my opinions, whether you like it or not. It's time for reviews.
Let's review.
Review it.
The review.
The reviews are in. I repeat, the reviews are in.
Go to your reviews.
What?
Speaking of bad reviews,
Don't worry about that review.
Let's review all the facts.
All right, gentlemen, let's review.
Before we do, let's review.
Those reviews really came out fast.
Maybe we can review some right now?
I'm not going to review all that again.
Now let's review.
Not my worst review.
Let's review, shall we? To review.
I think I've reviewed about as much as I can.
Hey, everybody, I'm still setting up my second camera, actually. Hold on. I'm almost ready for you. Took me a little longer than usual to set that up. Let me add the extra camera. That's why I've got such a long bumper there, but this time I was having an issue with it. All right. Let me get that out of the way. And you don't need to see my coffee mug anymore. Let's zoom in a little. Yeah. I love Feral. I love it. It's so good. How long did it take to hunt down those clips? Not that long. There are a couple sites where you can search media clips by words or phrases, and then you can sort of get better versions of it after you know where to look. Yeah, it was a little earlier. It actually did not devolve into arguments, but nice to see you, Chuck. What to start? Oh, you know what I'll start with? Let's just do something fun. I'll open a blind bag, right? I mean, I know it's a gimmick and everything, but these are kind of fun. Let's see what cover I got from the Mark Spears, The Monster and the Wolf, the Trick or Treat blind bag. Just to be clear, Mark started his Monsters series by doing trading cards. So they were in bags like this, and you'd open it up and you'd get his painted cards of various classic monsters. And to make a blind bag to look like you're opening up, cards and have it themed to Halloween, it's a gimmick, but I think it's a cleverly done one. I think he did a good job with that. All right, hold on. I'm just throwing away my money doing these unboxings, which are just so damned popular. All right, here we go. Ready? That's the back with all the different covers, and I got whatever this is. That is pretty disturbing, I gotta say. That does not turn me on. I love, you know what I love in women? Faces. Sorry to all the women without faces out there, but I love a woman with a face. That's what I love about face. There's something I see about Mark Spears that it's not done in the same style, but there is an attention to three-dimensionality and value in hues that reminds me in a good way here and there of Richard Corbin. It doesn't look like Richard Corbin, but it reminds me in some ways. Fun, but I haven't read it yet, so can't really review that. I'll tell it to her face. Hey, baby, I hear them blues are calling. Toss salads and scrambled eggs. Mercy. And baby, I seem a bit confused. Yeah, maybe, but I got you pegged. Ha ha! But I don't know what to do with those tossed salads and scrambled eggs. They calling again. That's what I do when I unfreeze from Medusa freezings. Sorry, that's who I am. All right. I'm going to talk about Lucky Devils first. Surprise. So obviously, I'm super happy that Ryan Brown is doing well enough that he did all the art in this himself. He didn't need help with like layouts or anything. So he seems to be recovering from that stroke we heard about. This came out pretty quickly after the last one. And if you haven't been reading it, Lucky Devils is a story about like two devils, like devil on the shoulder type thing, who are, instead of trying to corrupt humans, they're trying to give them a boost up and reward their good actions in the attempts to take down the bureaucracy that is hell, because you go up levels and stuff. But as this couple of devils gets closer to their goal and has become wealthy enough to have like a nice apartment, their goals change. Rake, the female devil, is content with what they've achieved and realizes that like they're more likely to get caught the less suspects there are, and as they go higher up the echelon, they're more likely to be caught. But Collar is really committed to the idea of bringing down hell. Add into all of this that they've sort of been hiding some secrets from each other. Too many ums. There's also a really great little subplot here where they're being hunted or tracked down by a devil bounty hunter whose family was killed in these cataclysms that happen when hell has too much goodness in it. They get like earthquakes and, sewer explosions and stuff like that. And so she's got really valid reason for going after these two devils. The humans really are almost the subplot in this issue, but there's also some great stuff where there might be some other devils that are following secretly in this movement that these guys have started. So it's a really interesting idea of like bringing down the system, even though it's all supernatural and cool and fun. It's really interesting. Yeah. Kelsey Grammer from Transformers. Wait, was it? Oh, Transformers 4. Okay. Yeah, we all remember Kelsey Grammer's government official that Optimus Prime blew away with his gigantic robot gun, shouting, "Die." That's the Optimus Prime that we all know and love, right? Die. Anyway, I love this book. This is a fantastic meditation on philosophy as well. What is there a way to inherently measure good? And by the same token, to a degree, evil. Evil's almost easier to quantify, right? But how do you do true good? How do you do true good? Is it by being completely altruistic, or is it okay to benefit yourself if it in turn benefits others? And how do you measure benefit? So there's all these really interesting philosophical questions that get asked in Lucky Devils. It reminds me of a sitcom some of you may have seen, The Good Place. The Good Place was a funny sitcom about the afterlife, but it was also a meditation on different philosophies and what the nature of altruism was. And Lucky Devils is very funny and does some of the same stuff. I really like it. Yeah, what if you do good things for selfish motives? Like you want to do something for yourself and inadvertently that benefits like a bunch of other people. It's tricky. It's tricky to define. And it's just a fascinating element of the human condition that will always have philosophers coming up with different methodologies for defining what is good and how can you do good. There's another show that's on right now, and I'm trying to think of what it is, that talks about philosophy, and I'm all of a sudden blanking on what that show was, but I know that there was a show talking about inherent like good and altruism and philosophies. Oh, you know what it was? Sorry, it was new to me, but it's an older, not that old. AP Bio. AP Bio. I just remembered. You can see that on, I think, Peacock and Netflix. Basically, yeah, it's got a philosophy professor forced to teach an AP Bio class at a high school instead of getting to work at like a distinguished university. And he's not a great person, but he talks a lot about philosophy. Battle Beast has been a blast. It's been a battle blast. Nice cover here by somebody in the chat room. EJ Sue did this cover. Whenever possible, I'll get an EJ Sue cover. I got how many did I get this week? I got 3 EJ Sue covers because I also picked up Blood and Thunder issues 5 and 6. I'd been behind. He does the interiors for these, whereas Ryan Otley does this. So I got his cover of Hector, which is written by Benito Cereno, who writes Blood and Thunder. So very incestuous Skybound stuff here, huh? I'm supporting Skybound, I guess. Let's talk about Battle Beast. It's really cool because Battle Beast has been defined purely by his desire to fight. And as this book goes on and we get to know the character, we realize that he doesn't fight just because he enjoys it. He fights because he just constantly has anger. It's like a chemical thing for him. He just constantly has anger. Battling, fighting to the death is the only way to release it. Otherwise, it would, he just has to. It is who he is. And he doesn't like his nature. In fact, because he knows he's so dangerous, he left his home world. Because he cares for it. So he does care for things. He does care for things, even though he seems like all he cares about is killing, like in a fight. No. And he's starting to focus some of this by protecting an alien, a weak alien, that initially just promised that he could get him to fight this huge other threat that was a threat to his home planet. And he realizes that he's sort of got a friend. And it's he doesn't talk about it in such, clear terms. It's very much in the subtext. So I admire that because I feel like I've always enjoyed Robert's writing. I haven't always felt like there's a lot of subtext to his dialogue. I felt like a lot of his dialogue can be very much stating exactly how somebody feels, or maybe they don't talk at all about their feelings. But I feel like there is a subtext developing with Battle Beast, and I feel like it shows a bit of an evolution with Robert's writing. And I also think that there's an evolution with Ryan Otley's art. Now, if you go back to his indie work at Digital Webbing Presents or his first few issues of Invincible, it didn't have this level of detail. But detail is surface level in a way. Detail is cool, but his compositions are really, really strong. He comes up with intersecting elements, and he makes that the biggest, most dynamic part of it. All this ichor and bodily humors, that's the surface level, cool looking stuff that gives it a polish and a sheen. But even if you simplified that to just Battle Beast using this dagger to cut off an arm, there's a cool intersection of action here, right? And there's big shapes, there's a big circle here, and then there's some sharp triangular images of swords and stuff in the environment. But do you see that? How there's this triangle that intersects the circular shape, and that draws our eye through the page. And he knows how much space to give that. And to his credit, Robert knows to give Robert knows to give Ryan enough space so that you can see this cool image and it isn't overloaded with too much text. So while this is a very action-based story, I think that the storytelling is on a very high level, very high level. There's just, he's not going to break the panels, Ryan Ottley isn't, unless it has a story reason. In this, Battle Beast is being flung an unfathomable distance. That's a really good use for breaking a panel border and to draw the eye across the page. Like if it was being thrown this way, or if it was in the middle of this panel and it was just a fight and like one elbow or a hand or a fist was sticking out a little bit over the panel border, that can be very disorienting. Gutters serve an important storytelling thing where we're not paying attention to the gutter per se, but it helps break up the action in a very clear way. You have to have really good rules for when you're going to break that. So I just really admire the storytelling on this, both in a writing and an art sense at this point. And I hope I've articulated enough. I'll also just say that, and I told Ryan this in person, his backgrounds are really impressive. When you do this much action and this much detail, it might not be fun to draw, an isometric 3-point perspective castle environment, right? Or to draw a lot of vegetation. But Ryan knows how to do a few things to help himself. He didn't make this the biggest panel so that he has to draw lots of extra stone details. Or in this, it's got plenty of detail. It's also got a really good middle ground that's completely blacked out so that you can have the more open area of the close-up vegetation and the background of the castle. These are all very good decisions. These are all really good decisions. So I'm talking about this issue on a very technical level, but I hope that helps explain some of why I get so excited. I love doing this kind of analysis. I read too fast for books like this. I read through it fast too, but this is part of why I like doing the show, is it makes me pause now to look at it on another level, because I know enough by reading enough comics to know when I'm reading something quickly that sometimes that can be a very good sign for good writing and good art. Ryan does it all. And I think he does a lot of it digitally now, but yeah. Oh, Ryan on somebody like Lobo would be really cool. Yeah. Anyway, I do recommend it, folks. Blood and Thunder is another book that seems like it is, on the surface level, an action sci-fi thing. We've got humans, we've got aliens, we've got bounty hunters, we've got big fight scenes with powerful monster characters. But this also goes a level deeper than that. First of all, this is a really funny book a lot of the time. The dialogue here by Benito Cereno legit makes me laugh, okay? Bloodsoe is a bounty hunter. She's got a talking gun called Thunder. And the gun actually has a bit of a moral compass because it's kind of an old gun and its AI is older, I guess. It can turn anything she puts into it into different types of rounds. In this, she's fighting, a battle where she's almost out of ammo and she's just jamming in whatever's close by to fight essentially a vampire, an alien vampire. But that's just one quick scene. We've also got a morality argument here about colonialism. The people the humans who've taken over this planet have subjugated its natives and treat things like their books in a library as like a curiosity, because everything is done online now, or on computers. And this one monster who's called the Prisoner and who Blood's been tracking down for the police, he seems unkillable for the first few issues, just an unkillable killing machine, right? But now he's got an appreciation for these books. He's got an appreciation for aliens that the humans don't. And you start to realize, wait a minute, the only people he's been killing are humans. And it might be because the humans in this far future setting might be very, very corrupt. Not all, but a lot of corruption, like a lot of moving into the galaxy and not treating others with respect. And so he might not be this completely evil killing machine that we were initially led to believe. He might only be targeting a certain type of people, and we just didn't pick up on that for the first few issues. He's willing to stop, pause, and have a conversation with Blood because he knows, first of all, that he can't be beaten by her. And he's like, he brings up all these different ideas that she should be thinking about. He's like, you know, your gun isn't willing to just indiscriminately start shooting, but you kind of were. You might want to think about that. And he's like, what's my name? He's like, you were given a task to hunt me down. What's my name? And she's like, prisoner? Wait, where does she say that? Oh, yeah. One last question, Officer Bloodso. What's my name? I tried to do a voice, but I'm sick, so I'm still congested, and I couldn't do the voice. The prisoner? Anyway. It brings up some really interesting ideas, but to be clear, that's mixed into all sorts of cool action and stuff. And I love that EJ can handle both of these things. Like, these are great dynamic shots. This is a great angle, especially as it leads into the next page. And I love that he's got these lines that technically would intersect here. That's good. He's got the action from off screen jumping into panel. And then the next panel, he's got action going off the panel, which leads you right into the next page. Very good left to right storytelling. Now that I think of it, EJ could have easily been like he's from Taiwan, so I know that EJ grew up with a lot of manga and manhwa, and it would have read right to left, but he definitely knows how to easily guide the eye left to right. That's amazing. It's so good. When to put in a low angle like this to show Blood at her most powerful, because this is when she basically wins the battle. And so right before we see that, we get a nice low angle shot, which makes her look bigger and more powerful. She's in the foreground here, taking up the fully half the biggest panel. That's a way of subtly making us feel she's big and important and strong in this moment. It's not telling us that with dialogue. It's showing us. And this is what I like in good storytelling in comics, is when this stuff, it just, we feel it subconsciously at best. We just go with it, and it tells a new story. Anyway, this is up to issue 6, but according to Benito, when I had him on the show, he's written this out for like 2 or 3 years. He's way, way ahead. Sorry, somebody told me I missed a good comment by Sean. Oh, I ran into Derek Kirk Kim at the Baltimore Comic-Con. Oh, you guys both got to go? I love that convention. He said he loved my work on Blood and Thunder and my Godzilla book. I think he got me confused with another artist that hangs out in this live stream. Oh, I'm sure oh, that's too bad. I'm sorry for the confusion. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know that you've done Evermind, you've done Avengers, you did that great run on Iron Man. Iron Man's due for a really good run. I'm sure if he knew what you read, he's read that too. I'm sorry that there was a confusion there. I know I'm talking a lot about my friends, but you know what? I'm just going to talk a lot about comics tonight and do reviews. Hector Plasm. Hector has had a few one-shots before. Up to now, it's always been written by Benito Cerino and drawn by Nate Bellegarde, an artist I love. This is a 2-issue story with a different artist, Derek Hunter, and he brings a different vibe, but it fits really well for this character. And I think it, I liked it a lot. Now, Derek Hunter has worked a bunch in animation, which might be obvious to tell when you look at how energetic and expressive these characters are. Also, he's done Walking Dead Bites, these short Walking Dead funny comics at the back of Walking Dead Deluxe. Anyway, Hector Plasm specifically deals more with like ghosts and spirits and stuff like that. Okay, he's a supernatural detective, but he's not the same sort of supernatural detective as Hellboy that goes up against monsters and vampires and Nazis and stuff like that. Very Kirby-esque sometimes there. He's not the kind of detective that like John Constantine is, where he's doing spells and he's a scumbag. He's a wanderer that specifically deals with ghosts, and he does have various weapons and trinkets that are designed to deal with witches, ghosts. There are other things in this world like vampires and demons, but he has a very specific sort of work for himself, and in this, he has defeated a ghost and a witch in this small Pacific Northwestern town, and a bunch of people there claim that Bigfoot is there, and he doesn't believe in Bigfoot. And in fact, there's a local history professor that invited him, and he runs, a town museum that has Bigfoot stuff, but it's just to bring in tourists. He also doesn't believe in Bigfoot, which is pretty funny. In fact, there's a really great panel here where one person is arguing that that Bigfoot is real and stuff, and Hector explains his modus operandi and all that stuff. But then I like this professor just coming in from right off panel, finger up to make a point. Also, there's the fact that Sasquatch doesn't actually exist. And Hector just sort of pointing at him, going like, that's true. Mr. Gervais makes a good point. Bigfoots aren't real. I don't know. That's a very funny panel to me. I think that I like the art. Somebody ends up dead. Obviously, the potential Bigfoot is a suspect. There's a mystery to this. And I like that it's got a supernatural character going out of their element. Like, supernatural doesn't necessarily mean that they should go after a cryptid, right? That could just be a normal living being. So I don't know. Oh, very nice. You got to meet Sean? Great dude. Go back his Kickstarter for Evermind. Very nice. Very nice. I hope it helps. Yeah, I could see that. I don't know the exact animated shows that Derek has worked on. That I didn't think to look up, but it's great. It's really expressive. Super fun. I think it plays in very well to Benito's sense of humor, which is a lot of dialogue humor. Some of it's like, character-based, situational-based, even like slapstick type stuff, like where we see him getting like, punched during his introduction. This is our introduction to him, and he's getting punched all the way across 2 pages. Sets him up as a bit of an underdog hero at best. But because so much of it is dialogue-based, I love how expressive these characters are, enumerating things. But it helps us focus on the dialogue, and it speaks to character. It's really, really cool. It's a great book, folks. Look at that cover by Ryan. Look at that crazy monster he's got there. That is wild. There's a little baby here. A little baby. I probably have a little less to say about some of the superhero stuff that I read this week, but I have been enjoying One World Under Doom more and more. This is a series that got off to what I would consider the series itself a little bit of a slow start, because it just felt like Dr. Doom kept beating the heroes at every turn. And it was like, is he really going to be like some sort of noble leader of humanity that actually brings us hospitals and the end of wars? Like, what are we trying to say here? Dr. Doom is a bad guy. Like, why is he doing why is he constantly beating the heroes and doing all these things? Well, eventually we get the twist. He's powering himself magically by stealing like the life essence of his own citizens. And in this, he goes up against his enemies and is still like beating them very thoroughly. He's used his magic to lock this moment in time so that it is a fixed moment and can't be changed, so that he can, like just forever like have this sort of moment, right? There's some cool little things in here. There's a moment where the Thing, gets to pick up Stormbreaker, Beta Ray Bill's hammer. I saw some comic book news sites saying that they thought this meant that the Thing is worthy of lifting Thor's hammer. And to that I say, you're getting your mythology wrong. That's only on Mjolnir, which they have had too many people lift. But Stormbreaker does not have that enchantment. Stormbreaker it doesn't have that enchantment. Anybody can lift it that's strong. And I'm not going to show you it, but Doctor Doom messes up during this battle that he's fixed in time, and he kills somebody by accident that's very important to him. That's very important to a lot of characters. I won't say which character it is because I don't want to spoil that per se. Let's just say it stunned me who they do this to. It stunned me the method that they do it in. It's very explicit in its own way, not gory per se, but very explicit. And what a perfect moment to have the penultimate issue. I don't know how this will get resolved now. Do I think that like good characters are going to be killed off permanently? No. But I also can't figure out how they're going to potentially undo or fix this. Or, if not, what the repercussions could be. So Ryan North has created a really great cliffhanger. One of the best cliffhangers I've come across in a few months. It's not Invisible Woman. I don't think any of you would necessarily guess it if you haven't been reading this, okay? If you haven't been reading this, you might not guess it. That doesn't mean that it isn't important, and it isn't one of the biggest shocks you'd see in a Marvel comic. I'll leave it like that. It's really shocking, okay? Nobody say what it is, please. What's cool isn't the shock per se. It's that I don't know where the story can go from here, but I like not knowing. I like that I'll be surprised. And I've been reading the Fantastic Four run by Ryan for almost 3 years, and he keeps surprising me with good story twists. He keeps telling like 1 to 2 issue sci-fi mystery stories that often have a little bit of a twist at the end. And if not, like they're not all twists, but a bunch of them. And it reminds me of good sci-fi like Twilight Zone or The Best of Black Mirror, things like that, where they're introducing a new sci-fi idea, coming up with a mystery around it, and coming up with a clever resolution, a character-based thing where you're like, oh, this character did something to think outside the box or to use their experience in a new way. And I like that. I really, really enjoyed this. Better cliffhanger than Stallone in Cliffhanger? Well, he did go up against John Lithgow in that. Did that movie have Michael Rooker in it as his best friend, or was that somebody else? I saw that in the theater, but that's pretty good. Anyway, even though it's part of, an event and it's issue 8 of 9, I did think that this issue sets itself up for what this central conflict is going to be, a particular battle with Doctor Doom and a surprise cliffhanger. But if you're going to do a cliffhanger, do it on the second to last issue. Really, really good. Oh, I am remembering that right? Yeah. Cliffhanger was one of Stallone's better movies as he moved into the 90s, because he was huge in the 80s. And the 90s, he started to fall off by making some not great movies. Not that he didn't have some clunkers in the 80s too, but he was pretty huge throughout the 80s. In the 90s, it was a little more hit and miss. Demolition Man and Cliffhanger were his best in the 90s. Yeah, you guessed it right. They kill off Stanley. They just disembowel him. It's terrible. I haven't watched that show. Is it good? That's cool. I haven't watched it. Yeah. Hulk is a book that I like, but don't love. because I mean, I've read it for 30 issues. I haven't dropped it. I've liked it enough to stay with it. I like the ideas and I like the art, but I have to admit that sometimes I find it a little lacking just based on its cool premise. The premise is there's an ancient evil called the Eldest who wants Hulk's body because it could unlock the first evil, basically, called the mother of all horrors. And so the Eldest is the mother's firstborn. Really, really powerful being. Wants to use Hulk's body to unlock that. What that means in practice is that initially, all sorts of monsters were being sent after Hulk, which included some of the famous ones we've seen in Marvel, like Man-Thing or various vampires, a Ghost Rider, not the Ghost Rider, a Ghost Rider. You know, like there've been different monsters, but there haven't been enough monsters for my money. I wanted to see even more. There've been mostly original monsters, and they're cool, and some of them are downright creepy, like these sort of zombie parishioners that worshipped like this dead little girl that would like give them commands. That was creepy as hell. But the Eldest this is the last issue of this run on Hulk, and next month it restarts called the Infernal Hulk. And what's cool is it's all about how Eldest finally sort of defeats Hulk, who's the strongest there is, right? How can Eldest, and in this case specifically possessing the body of Abomination, Hulk's enemy that's at the same power level, how could it beat Hulk? Well, very specifically, without like going to the end, this happens by the middle. It separates Bruce Banner and Hulk on a supernatural level. It pulls Bruce Banner out of the Hulk. It separates them as beings, which changes like all these rules that were governing things. And from there, Eldest gets the upper hand. That doesn't kill Hulk, by the way. It just means that Hulk and Bruce Banner are separated, which we have seen once or twice in the past. But that dichotomy has always been that they've shared a body, right? And when they've been separated, it's always been pretty brief, and it's been more for sci-fi type stories. This is a very supernatural story. And this upends it by meaning like, well, we don't know 100% what it will mean, but it means they probably need each other. They probably need each other. Nick Klein needs to be reminded that Abomination has 2 toes, not 5. I didn't catch that. All this talk. Let's see. 2 toes. Yeah, that might be 5. Hold on. Yep, you're right. Abomination canonically is drawn. But however, this version has been changed a little because Abomination also doesn't have horns typically. So if I were to earn a Marvel No prize, it would be this version of Abomination has been changed by being possessed. So he grew horns and I guess 3 more toes on each foot. So that's my explanation, and I hope that earns me a prize. No, what I've liked though is when it's drawn by Nick Klein, it looks amazing. Look at this, a 2-page spread this way. That's the mother of all horrors, and I'm not going to go past that to show what happens with this creature, but this has been like sort of locked away for an unfathomably long time. Okay. This powerful first evil, this powerful, more than a demon, like the devil in a way, the devil. And then they subvert expectations, they being, I guess, like the writer and artist, Philip Kennedy Johnson, Nick Klein, they subvert what we expect to happen after this. So this is about halfway to 2/3. I'm not going to go past that. It does subvert my expectations in several ways, which I liked. But that 2-page spread is just incredible. Just incredible. It looks like it should be on like a 1980s metal cover. Been a long time since I've seen a vertical spread. Used to be a big thing in the 90s. I agree. Yeah, we've seen 2-page spreads, but when was the last time you saw a vertical spread? It's been a while, right? Like, and used to great effect here. These dimensions really benefit the story. Look at how we're always shown, like, Hulk is massive, right? Look at how small Hulk is compared to this thing. It's just, you know, it shows signs of rot. It's got, you know, chains all over it. It's just this organic mass, but it all just looks so musty and moldy too. You know, props to the colorist. I think that carries a lot of weight too, but this line art is gorgeous. Just an amazing 2-page spread. Get it for just this. Get it for that. So it's a book I like but don't love, just because I would have liked to have seen some more of Marvel's existing monsters used in this. I think it would be very fitting to actually use, you know, Blade and Morbius and Ghost Rider, like the actual, like, you know, either Robbie Reyes or Danny Ketch or Johnny Blaze, or use Simon Garth, the zombie. You know, use these characters. Use some of them. So anyway, get it for the must, stay for the mold, die from the inhalation. I think that they've basically explained it that none of the other sort of personalities that he has are as strong as his one. Yeah, they play fast and loose, first of all, with how Bruce Banner's dissociative identity disorder works. They play fast and loose with it. Because you could also say, well, there have been storylines where one time the Ringmaster hypnotized him, and that's what sort of created a so-called Professor Hulk or Smart Hulk, where they united all the personalities except Savage Hulk was actually hidden. But like Mr. Fix-It and Regular Hulk and any others. So they sort of hand wave that stuff depending on the writer. But I'm okay with that, depending on the run, what they want to focus on. I don't want a run to be cluttered up with too much lore and explanations for stuff to get there. Was it Doc Samson? I think it was them together, to be honest. I think it was Doc Samson did bring in Ringmaster to use a form of super hypnosis. It'll be interesting, I think, to follow from here, like Hulk as an outright villain and Bruce Banner trying to stop him and save his other self, save his Hulk self. The Professor was retconned as a separate alter. That can make sense too. That's a retcon I can totally go with. What do I have to say about these? I don't have as much to say about that. Let me talk about Spectators briefly. There's not a lot of images I can show you in this, okay? This is a very mature book. It is. What they've done here is created a story that is a meditation on sex and violence, how they intersect, how they correlate, and it does that specifically through a pair of ghosts that are sort of voyeurs. In this, whenever you see a page, anything black and white is the real living world, and anything in color are ghosts. And in this world, ghosts hold on. In this world, ghosts cannot interact with the living at all. Okay, it just hard and fast rule. They can't. They can't be seen. They can't push anything, and nothing's going to change about that. So what do you do if you're just existing here and you decide not to move on? You watch things that happen. You know, they can talk to each other and have conversations, pretty much philosophical conversations, because they're not going to be able to do much else. They can watch fights. They can watch people have sex. And this takes place, these ghosts are now in a pretty far future. I'm looking carefully at these pages. Gorgeous artwork, really interesting characters. And yeah, it speaks to like, what is it about us as humans that we are drawn to two things? We are drawn to sex, but we are also drawn to violence. Such different goals. Even if it's just entertainment, it is kind of like sad in a way that we enjoy fights and stuff like that on TV and in movies and in books and in comics. It is sad in a way, but we do want it. So, we got to admit it and just be who we are. And then the sex is flat out real. This is the main character, and in this she meets another ghost who is a cowboy. And they just sort of like, they can fly basic and go anywhere. And this guy says that he once spent like 9 years flying out to Neptune, and then like 13 years finding his way back to Earth just for something to do, because there's just like so little to do. Anyway, let me just say a few things about it, and I can't show you all the art because it is for adult audiences. It's got a lot of nudity and sex, okay? And I don't mind that at all. In fact, I think that this is, this is almost like taking the Alan Moore idea where he wanted to say pornography can be art, right? And he did things like Lost Girls with Melinda Gebbie, I think. And I get what he was going for. I didn't quite think that rose to the level of turning pornography into art. I admired the idea, and I didn't disagree with the idea. But I also think it's a tricky line. Because pornography has a certain goal, and art can have that goal, but to have literary merit, it does need to almost go above and beyond, right? It can't just sort of try. It has to really have like a deep meaning. And I think that Brian K. Vaughan and Nico Henrichon have achieved that. I think this is going to be one of my top 10 books of the year. I think that their philosophical discussions on what people like about both violence and sex are interesting, and how at odds they are. And on top of that, we are seeing basically the end of the world, okay? We are seeing like just a homegrown incels rise to the level where instead of just doing a mass shooting, they're at the point where they've created a nuclear bomb just to show that they can do it. And how that is finally upending society, and how scary that is, and how much they don't want to see the violence, but they want to see potentially the sex. I mean, it's completely opposite goals. Creation of life and end of life. But those are the two things that really fascinate us in stories, right? Art is a very vague term in a lot of ways, and it means different things to different people. I personally think that art is anything that's created to elicit an emotional response. That's what I think it would be. Anything that's created to that end could be classified as art. Not good art or bad art, just art. I want to watch things die from a distance. Sometimes they do that. I haven't reviewed this before, but this did come out on Substack, on Brian K. Vaughan's Substack, and now it's finally available as a full graphic novel. It really blew me away. It really blew me away. There's heartfelt conversations for multiple pages on what Terminator, the movie, is about. The movie specifically. That's what's going on here. She's remembering watching Terminator for the first time. And there's shots from the movie and how much she likes it and how much it means to her. And how she believes it's a romance story at its heart. Not horror, not action, not sci-fi, a romance. There's two men that both want Sarah Connor more than anything else in the world. One to kill her and one to, love her, but they both want her heart. And I was like, oh my God, that's a great way of looking at Terminator that hadn't occurred to me before. I I do recommend this. If you're watching this show, you're probably an adult, because it is for an adult. I don't think somebody super young could appreciate it, to be honest. I think you need a little bit of life experience to appreciate the conversations that go on in this. It is conversation heavy, but it also has plenty of sex and violence. I mean, it starts with a mass shooting in a movie theater, and it takes a lot of pages to like draw that tension out. And so it keeps setting up these scenes, and it reminds me sometimes of the way Tarantino can make a whole movie, but he can also have these scenes where it's just two characters talking about something and like the tension underneath. Oh, Stepan, I mean, it's very much, it seems, up your alley. Yeah, I think you'd appreciate it. It's really, really impressive. Nico previously worked with Brian K. Vaughan on that great graphic novel. I don't know if anybody read it, Pride of Baghdad, about how a bunch of zoo animals got free in Baghdad during the war. Great book. But anyway, yeah. Oh, yep. Somebody else. This is Comic Tropes After Dark. Exactly. This is the kind of place I can talk about that. Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting elements of this. Just gorgeous artwork, too. Really expressive characters. I did note at one point just how consistently they were drawn. I was like, yeah, that is the character. I have no confusion about who this character is. It doesn't look like they're changing from one panel to the next. I'll be honest, sometimes people that use too much photo reference in their art can do that to themselves. They can just sort of get a little too different panel to panel. It's really strong. It's really strong. So let me say this. If I'm choosing a book of the week for the show out of what I've read, some fantastic contenders in here. Some fantastic books. Out of what I've read this week, I personally would have to give it to Spectators by Vaughan and Henryshon. However, it's not like this just came out, right? This has been out, I guess, in hardcover for a little while, and it was out on Substack. So if I instead adjust it to just saying like, well, hey, what about the books that just came out this week instead? The one I'm going to like say I admired the most, just because I've seen an evolution of the artist and writer, is Battle Beast. Okay? It's a blast. I loved it. But it's a very different kind of book than some of these others. You know, this is a very deep philosophical introspection. And specifically about sex and violence. And then this is a deep meditation on altruism and the philosophical differences of how you can benefit society and potentially yourself. So those are both about philosophy in a very different way. This one I said is an action, also action. You could say both Blood and Thunder and Hector Plasm have action. This one has a lot of humor. This one also has a lot of philosophical ideas about what it means to be human, truly human. Anyway, a lot of great books this week, a lot. But the one I'll give the overall recommendation to is I really think you should consider picking this up, as long as you're not a prude. Oh, that's nice to hear. I never watched Gargoyles. That was, I'm pretty sure I was either in college or just after that and starting my professional career. So I don't know Gargoyles very well. So that's a bit of a blind spot, but I've always heard it's good. I had a good time talking to Greg Wiseman about it. I'm glad to hear that it's a good book. Yeah. I think it really benefited, but because it was probably released in chapters, I couldn't easily just go like, well, this must have been the final page of a chapter or something. I will say that there's something very forward moving about the story. Like it feels like it's constantly progressing. And I get that sometimes from manga too, which comes out, in a weekly format, a few less pages than you get in like a monthly book, right? I think there's something to be said about how much that propels a story forward. You just started watching it. Gargoyles is great. Nice. And you know what? I can't speak to it in a chapter base because I didn't experience it that way. That's interesting to think about. All I can say is I flew through it as a graphic novel. Flew through it. Loved it. Really got me thinking about a lot of stuff. Because the violence in it is not, action movie based. It's all either like shooting or bombs. And even though they put it in like a far future setting so that it's like not just misery, you're like, well, it's sci-fi enough. It's enough removed from the real world that you can appreciate it on some level as entertainment. But it's very real world based violence. Shootings and bombs are things that exist and always have pretty much and always will. Very affordable. I feel like I should. I feel like people like some of the twists that have gone on in Amazing Spider-Man. I feel like it's tricky to jump in on a monthly in the middle of a run, but maybe that's just me being an old fuddy-duddy. Maybe I should. Releasing in a web comic format really makes you consider how to keep things interesting on shorter page bursts. Great point. And I know you do a bunch of that, and that's probably also why Webtoon does well. I think we may have hit a saturation point on what we can do right now in terms of decompressed storytelling or writing for a trade, and that people like getting a really good energetic pace where there's always something interesting on every panel, every page, because they can get that with web comics and with manga. And that writing for, a monthly, 22 pages is great, but it's all about the execution. It's all about how can you best give people something that feels like it's constantly moving forward, not like rolling back and recapping too much, not giving you too much background on lore and getting bogged down in continuity. No, you got to tell a story. You got to have like characters that are interesting and engaging, a conflict that people can relate to and understand. I didn't see either of them, but I don't think I knew that Ed Brubaker was at New York Comic Con. Otherwise, I would have tried a little harder. But I didn't see everybody I wanted to see. I realized that even 2 days is really hard. No, you can go too far the other direction too, okay? Again, I'll emphasize it's about execution. It is. I admire that Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips can take 6 months to release, basically the equivalent of a 6-issue story as one graphic novel, and I can blow through that really fast, right? They didn't have to release those chapters monthly or in any other fashion. I admire that, but that's a big story, and I still fly through it. So that's really well paced. It's about pacing. 22-page format often works hard for just one end-of-issue beat, which slows down the pace. It can be very tricky to do. It really can. I think that when you look back at the history of comics, let's look at the Golden Age. Everything was anthologies, pretty much. It was all anthologies of like maybe 8-page stories. You were in and out. 3 bat stories in an issue of Detective Comics. They were 8-page stories. You were in and out. By the Silver Age, you're still getting at least a backup story in a bunch of the books. You're getting different genres like romance. You're getting in the 50s, there was all the EC comic stuff. In other words, it wasn't the norm to do 22 pages of just one superhero book. But by the Bronze Age, it does become the norm, right? But here's what they did that was a little different then. Lots of subplots that were melodramatic. It was soap opera stuff. People were into it. People were really into, in the Avengers, the Scarlet Witch, Wonder Man, Vision, love triangle. Or you go to Spider-Man and, is he with Mary Jane? Is he with Betty Brant? Is he with Gwen Stacy? How's he going to pay for this? Lots of melodrama, lots of it. And it's a different type of storytelling than just trying to tell an action type story, an action forward story. If you're going to tell an action story, maybe that works better in 8 to 11 page chunks. Maybe it does, as compared to 22. I don't know. It can be done. Of course it can be. But I think we are seeing a lot of shorter stories, and historically, the industry did start with shorter stories. The idea of having this continuity for superhero stuff that doesn't end, or even creator-owned books that are going to be really, really long. I think that a lot of writers can focus on cool story ideas, cool plot beats, cool characters, but they're not always thinking of a structure. And by structure, I mean, what are we doing for rising and falling tension to really rocket a reader through this story? Are we cutting to a subplot just because we've got to fill a page or two? Or are we cutting to a subplot because this is the most interesting moment in one story and you're getting hyped for it, and then before you get the resolution, we're taking you to something else that is now going to also excite and capture your attention. And you've got in the back of your mind, you're like, well, wait a minute, I still want to see how the first story resolves. That's important when you're a writer, to really think about the structure, to just have constant, a roller coaster of rising and falling tension, and end it properly. I'm reading DC Finest Kryptonite Nevermore, where you can see the transition in 1971. Most stories are still short, but there's a continuing subplot with Kryptonite. I think that when we got into the Bronze Age, there was generally a storytelling change as comic book fans became comic book pros, and they wanted to expand on some of these ideas. They wanted a bigger story than what they'd been getting. And there was plenty of room for that. There was plenty of room. Plus, people were generally conditioned to be more patient. We did not have frenetic editing like you'd see in a John Woo action movie. We did not have fast-cutting music videos like you got in MTV in the 80s. Because I'm talking about the 70s and late 60s and stuff as the Bronze Age began. And you got these new writers and these new artists, these Steve Gerbers and Roy Thomases that wanted to expand on these ideas. But you had a more patient audience. And for good or ill, we do want a faster paced story now. We want to get to the point. We can enjoy a philosophical meditation, but it still has to be going somewhere. It still has to really engage. And that's very tricky. That's very tricky. You have to have really well-defined characters and character arcs and super good dialogue. The pacing's not easy. To this day, I still enjoy jumping on and doing an anthology. There's a fun challenge in short-form storytelling you just don't get with long stuff. Talk about an economy in storytelling. Yes, it's some of what anthologies are always hit and miss for me. They always are. I don't love everything in any anthology, I don't think. Some of them are more consistent than others. That's a lot due to an editor, I think. But I admire the goal of it, to tell you something kind of quick, get in and get out, and you just have to cut out all the fat, all of it, which you already, just to be clear, you generally have to do for a good 22-page superhero comic to be good. It's easy to either overload it with subplots and things like that to just fill up the pages, or you cut out all the fat and it's almost too short for 22 pages. So then what do you put in there? Anyway, I know I'm talking in very philosophical, broad terms because I'm not pointing to specific comics right now. So this isn't quite probably as engaging as an edited comic tropes episode where I can reference exactly what I'm talking about by thinking about it. But these are ideas I have in my head about storytelling. But I will say, I love comic books as a storytelling medium. I do think it forces you generally to whittle down the dialogue. And therefore, you have to be as clever as possible with it, as well as the pacing of a story. You'd be surprised if you haven't written a comic before, just how quickly an idea or two takes up real estate. Page, 2 pages, 3 pages, 4 pages. Oh my God, all I feel like I've done is introduce a character. Took 4 pages. I got to cut that down to like 2. It's a fun challenge, though. It's a fun challenge, and when it's done well, boy, do I admire it. No, I don't. What's that? If I go to an artist table and they're pushing an anthology, I just start sweating and shaking and reaching for my wallet. Good for you. I like trying new things at comics conventions. Yeah. You're very kind. I feel like even though I'm speaking off the cuff, is that the phrase? I think it is. That I still had some reasonably well pointed critiques of what I liked about some of these comics that I read this week, because I could point to a specific example and talk that through along with you. But when I start talking about pacing, even with an image, that's a very tough conversation to have. I don't know, if I had to talk about pacing, I feel like that would be something you could talk about as a lecture or a roundtable discussion, but doesn't lend itself very well to an edited video. Because even if I'm saying like, this is well paced, in practice, when you edit that, I've just said that sentence and shown 1 to 2 images and you're moving on. So that doesn't reflect the same pace as what I'm trying to relay you need to go for. Whereas if we have an actual conversation, are you saying like this fast? I'm saying like, no, this slow. Okay. It's something you could talk about in a writing class, which I've taught some. And it's something you could talk as a roundtable discussion with creatives. Like, oh, how do you guys get to the heart of this like really fast without, using too much real estate? It's hard to make an episode about pacing specifically. I can do small examples. Pacing is such a crucial concept, but explaining it why tends to be a layered conversation. Well, thanks for helping me put into words my thoughts. Not easy to go to the essential and still be entertaining. I think, honestly, it's something that almost paralyzes me when I do creative writing for myself. Is I feel like, first, I'm not trying to get it perfect. I will allow myself, when I sit down to write, just bang the whole story out, knowing that I personally am okay with doing another draft or 2. But when I do that, now all of a sudden I'm going like, well, geez, I want to have like all the concepts for like, we'll say a 64-page story. I want to have all the major characters. I want to have them basically introduced by 10 to 12 pages or so. That's how do you make each of those characters have like, a memorable introduction, but still continue with the story and the flow? They only have like maybe a panel or 2 to make an impression. Like, so what do they say? Or how do you help the artist understand like what action they're doing that like helps define them? That's really tough. Anyway. Comics read so fast, you can get through a graphic novel in a day, unlike a fat Stephen King novel that might take a week. Yeah. And I love books too, like novels. I love it because they can take the time to really set a scene, really help you imagine the world and what the characters are thinking and feeling. I love that. But I love the economy of comics. And I love that a good storyteller can slow things down or speed things up without, like, if you read a typical manga and you get to an action scene, if you played that in real time, that fight might be over in 2 minutes, we'll say, right? But if you represent it in an anime or just reading it as the manga, it could easily be 15 minutes because they slow it down and do important key beats of the story. And that's controlling the audience, still making it feel like it's moving in something close to real time. But of course it isn't. And comics do that. I mean, if we go back and read, 1980s X-Men, which is great, you still see like in a panel, like all these characters jumping through the air and Cyclops is like, Beast, remember to hit them from the right. And Beast is replying like, oh, my fearless leader, my stars and garters, how dare you think I would ever forget to hit Magneto from behind? And Iceman going, you always get mad at me for saying stuff like that, Scott. How about giving the furry blue guy, what for? And you're just like, what? All of that just happened as they jumped through the air? They all said that like paragraph? It doesn't make sense, but it feels authentic. So comics are about achieving a verisimilitude. It feels authentic. It feels real. But of course it isn't really. You're guiding the reader in terms of what's important to them. And if it's action, we might really be slowing those beats down in a way that looks exciting and dynamic. And you still might be flipping through the art really, really fast, but it's still going slower than real life. Well, I really rambled there. I'm feeling pretty worn out. I've been sick for the last few days, so I think I'm going to, wrap it up here. And I'm excited to see everybody next week. I enjoyed doing this episode, though. No big announcements from publishers to talk about. No event issues like just starting or just ending. No guest, and I feel like we still all together made a pretty entertaining show out of it. Some weird light balancing happens every once in a while. Really bleaches me out. Although I guess I am pretty pale. I had a great time talking to everybody about comics tonight. I think we got into some deeper stuff than usual, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you everybody for the feedback and stuff. I can't tell if I picked up con crud or if it's just this time of year where I can get congested with things like postnasal drip for a few days before my body just sort of adjusts, or both. I'm not sure. I've been toughing it out. I think my body's pretty run down now. Anyway, I had a great time, everybody. Let's see. Is there anything else that I want to go over? I gave my recommendations for indie comics to check out. Links in the description below. I'm working on the next Comic Tropes. It is something I've got to get it out before Halloween, which is 11 days away. So I've got to get it done in that time. Talking about an artist who's not exclusively known for this, but has done a bunch of horror art. I would call them masterful. I'm excited about it. On that, I've got most of my script done. So probably tomorrow I can finish that script and maybe even record it and then get to editing, which is going to take a long time. I uploaded a new episode on Comic Tropes. It was made for my patrons. They asked me to talk about Marvel Zombies, all of Marvel Zombies. So I did. And I just decided to do it as a tier list, talking about all the different series. Not as deep dive as talking about art techniques or art history, but hopefully fun. And it's just content to keep people engaged. Then I will let you know that tomorrow, Jim and I are recording a new trash movie bonanza, and we're going to put Jamie to work. He'll have just over a week to get it edited before Halloween. So we're going to do another goofy horror movie for Halloween. I'm excited. No, that was kind of a coincidence. That like I was talking about something horror related. I always give my Patreon members at $2 and above the ability to vote on an exclusive episode. Although sometimes I will also share that with everybody after a little while, but it's for them. They get to decide on it. And I gave them options all based on movies and TV shows adaptations. So, like, it could have been about Peacemaker. It could have been about what else has been on Tron. There have been Tron comics. There was something else. I can't remember all the movies and TV shows that are related to comics that have come out recently. And there was Marvel Zombies. And overwhelmingly, people wanted me to talk about Marvel Zombies. So I was happy to. It was unique. Anyway, you guys are great. That's everything I got to get off my chest, except for this phlegm. Gotta get this phlegm off my chest so that I am alive next week. You're all great. Double salute for staying this long. Enjoy. I'm going to edit this to put in chapter breaks. Take care, everybody. Keep reading comics.